There was an officer-involved shooting that took place at a downtown residential apartment building. Let's start with the reality, which is that any loss of life is tragic. And that's where we're keeping our thoughts front and center as we work alongside our community partners and as the investigation gets underway through our interim chief Huffman and, of course, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I'll repeat that this happened in a residential apartment building, and so the impact that it'll have on residents in both that building and that neighborhood are going to be substantial, and so we're going to make sure that any resources that are necessary are there to be provided to those individuals that are undoubtedly experiencing quite a bit of trauma. Truth and transparency, as is always the case, will be the guiding principles as the investigation itself is conducted. The investigation itself is already underway with the BCA, and we will be providing updates and facts as quickly as possible. Again, we have very limited information that we're able to provide at this point in time, and so but Deputy Chief Huffman will be able to provide a bit of a rundown on the facts that we are able to disseminate at this point in time. Excuse me, Interim Chief Huffman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for being here this morning. Before I provide a description of the events that happened, I just want to take a moment to echo the Mayor. Any officer-involved shooting is a tragic incident. This is the call that no police chief ever wants to receive. And I want to, first and foremost, pass along my condolences. Our thoughts are with the family and friends who loved the man who lost his life today, and with the community, because these events are a wrenching loss. They're traumatic for those not only who knew him, but everyone who lives in Minneapolis, and for the officers who are on the scene as well. At approximately 6:48 this morning, officers from the Minneapolis Police Department SWAT team were serving search warrants to assist the St. Paul Police Department's homicide unit in the 1100 block of Marquette. This was related to an ongoing murder investigation. The officers gained entry to the target apartment using a key fob. They loudly and repeatedly announced police search warrant before they crossed the threshold into the apartment, and ongoing as they made entry. Just over 9 seconds after they had made entry into the apartment, the officers encountered a male who was armed with a handgun. He was holding that gun in his hand at the time that shots were fired. There was one involved officer. Immediately, medical attention was provided to the individual who was shot, and the officers carried him to meet paramedics who continued to render aid as he was transported to the hospital. Unfortunately, he was pronounced dead at Hennepin Healthcare. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension was notified immediately and is heading up the criminal investigation. There was a handgun recovered at the scene, and it was loaded with 5.7 millimeter rounds. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take questions today because the ongoing criminal investigation is in the hands of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and we need to respect their work. And the homicide investigation is in the hands of the St. Paul Police Department, who continues to work on that case. I appreciate your presence and your information that you will be sharing with the community. We will do our best to get more information out to folks as soon as possible, including potentially photos or videos as we work through the necessary steps with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. Thank you.
Have you seen the body cam video?
I have.
Okay.
That's it. We were just listening to the news conference, of course, after the shooting that happened this morning down near, I believe it was Marquette, 11th Street's, the Bolero Flats apartment. And we were just hearing from both Mayor Jacob Fry and the interim Police Chief Huffman talking about very non-specific points of what happened this morning, except for the fact that the police were serving a search warrant, Minneapolis police, and that the person who they encountered had a gun in his hand. That person was shot, and they were pronounced dead at HCMC. No further information is being shared yet, but we'll try to get more for you as soon as we get it. That's the story with what happened there this morning. Again, a couple of officers involved. One of the officers, at least, shooting the individual they were serving the warrant to, who lost his life. We'll have much more in just a moment.